The courtroom camera focuses on the defendant. Bianca Ellis is smiling, a faint, unsettling smirk that slices through the solemn air of the arraignment. Across the room, a mother weeps, clutching a photograph of her 3-year-old son, Julian Wood. This silent conflict of absolute cruelty and desperate grief demands immediate, visceral attention. This is the central mystery of the Homestead case. Why the smile? Ellis carried herself with bizarre composure, playing dumb, shrugging off homicide charges while the victim's family watched in agonizing horror. Her mask of ignorance was a calculated challenge to the court's authority and human empathy. The terrible events began on June 3, 2024, in Homestead, Ohio. The mundane setting of a Giant Eagle grocery store parking lot was where the nightmare began. Ellis had already stolen the murder weapon, a knife, from a nearby thrift store, an act of chilling premeditation. Surveillance footage shows her leaving the thrift store, knife concealed, her eyes sharp and assessing. She was hunting. The defense would later claim a psychotic break, but the visual evidence of her calm, calculated movements defied that easy, comforting explanation. She spotted the mother leaving the grocery store with her 3-year-old son, Julian Wood. Ellis followed them quietly into the parking lot. The shift from a routine shopping trip to a targeted pursuit was instantaneous, captured in cold, precise detail by the high-resolution store cameras. What happened next was a flash of sudden, devastating violence. Without warning, Ellis attacked. The mother screamed for help, but the knife had already found its target. A small life, just beginning, was irrevocably stolen in a violent, senseless burst. Julian was rushed to a nearby hospital, but the trauma was fatal. His life ended not by accident, but by a deliberate act of malice. The terror of the mother's scream echoed the community's disbelief and sorrow over the senseless cruelty. Officers arrested Ellis minutes later, walking calmly toward the road, still carrying the bloody knife. She offered no resistance and, crucially, no visible remorse. This blank, unsettling detachment would become the central psychological battleground of the entire trial. Detectives meticulously pieced together the evidence: the store surveillance, the knife theft, the witness statements, and the video of the attack. Every single piece of evidence contradicted the defense's later claim of a confused, chaotic mind. Prosecutors charged her with multiple felonies, including aggravated homicide, attempted homicide, and felonious assault. They were determined to prove the attack was deliberate and intentional, challenging the notion that severe illness grants criminal impunity. The defense attorney immediately countered by claiming Ellis was battling severe mental illness. They asserted she suffered from schizophrenia and had not been taking her medication, aiming to shift the narrative from guilty malice to tragic illness. When Bianca Ellis first appeared in court, she established her mask. She spoke softly, smiled faintly, and acted utterly confused by the grave charges. This behavior was a calculated gambit to sway the court and the public. The father of Julian Wood begged the judge for justice, his anguish palpable. He demanded the highest possible bond, pleading with the judge to keep this monster locked away, preventing any further harm to the community. The judge set the bond at $5 million. This high figure effectively guaranteed her incarceration, securing the safety the victim's family desperately sought as the complex legal arguments about intent played out. The prosecution focused on the key evidence: the footage, the knife theft, and the calm arrest. All these details suggested a terrifying awareness beneath the surface presentation of confusion, a crucial counterpoint to the defense's claims. The defense focused on pretrial proceedings, arguing her mental state rendered her incompetent to stand trial. The legal system required certainty. Could she understand the charges and assist her defense, or was she too mentally fractured? After several months of court-ordered treatment in a state facility, doctors concluded she was indeed competent. The performance of confusion had failed the legal test. The stage was set for the showdown of insanity versus accountability. The trial began with the prosecution laying out the premeditation. They described her deliberate actions, contrasting the clinical details of the knife theft with the horrific brutality inflicted on the innocent child. Prosecutor: the defendant went hunting for a victim. She found one, and she acted with a cruel, terrifying clarity. That smile is not confusion. It is contempt for the life she destroyed. The words were sharp, reaching the jury. The defense attempted to re-establish doubt, portraying her as a lost soul betrayed by a failed mental health system. They argued that a brain ravaged by schizophrenia cannot be held to the standard of a guilty mind. Julian Wood's mother took the stand. Her testimony was raw, tearful, and focused entirely on the vibrant life that was stolen. Her quiet grief was a powerful, human counterpoint to Ellis's unsettling courtroom detachment. The defense attorney objected, trying to legally confine the narrative solely to the definition of intent. The judge allowed the mother's testimony, recognizing the weight of the victim's absence in the courtroom narrative. The defense called their psychiatric experts, who testified Ellis's actions were driven by severe delusions and auditory hallucinations, classic symptoms of her diagnosis, which obscured her perception of reality. The expert detailed the profound disorganization of her thoughts. The defense argued this was not a matter of choice, but a tragedy caused by illness, demanding empathy and treatment, not prison. The prosecution cross-examined fiercely, zeroing in on the crime summary, the targeted nature of the attack. They argued that even delusional thinking can produce a rational, planned sequence of steps toward a specific goal. Prosecutor: she walked into the store, chose the weapon, hid the weapon, tracked the victim, and waited for the moment. Those are not random, chaotic actions, doctor. They are steps of a clear plan. The argument resonated with the jury. The tension escalated as the prosecution prepared the evidence reveal. They promised the jury a chilling, unfiltered glimpse into the truth Ellis had desperately tried to conceal behind her calculated mask of ignorance. The surveillance video played. The courtroom fell silent. Every juror watched the silent, terrible footage. Ellis deliberately selecting the knife, concealing it, following the mother and child, and finally, the swift, intentional attack. The footage was the ultimate rebuttal to the insanity claim. Her movements were purposeful, not erratic. Her eyes tracked the victims with cold, focused concentration, utterly destroying the narrative of confusion. The defense attorney stared at the defendant. Ellis, for the first time, visibly crumbled. The smile vanished. Her body trembled, the mask finally cracked by the weight of the undeniable digital truth. The sight of Ellis breaking down fueled a surge of complicated emotions in the gallery. Was this genuine remorse, or simply the panic of a trapped manipulator seeing her final lie exposed? The audience questioned her sincerity. The prosecution launched into their closing argument, using the video as their primary witness. They spoke of the prosecution's theory that Ellis actively chose cruelty and accountability must follow. Prosecutor Reyes: the video is the voice of the dead. It tells you that the person you see smiling is capable of planning, capable of focus, and capable of murder. Do not be fooled by the tears now. The words emphasized conscious intent. The defense countered by emphasizing the defense's theory, that the mind must be judged along with the action. They pleaded for context, arguing that the severe illness makes a life sentence without parole unduly harsh. Defense counsel, we ask you to judge the mind that committed the act, not just the action itself. Illness is a critical context for intent. Find her accountable, yes, but remember the tragedy of a lost mind. The judge read the instructions, detailing the complex legal criteria for criminal intent versus legal insanity. The jury faced the agonizing task of translating severe mental illness into a clear legal verdict. The jury retired for deliberation. The courtroom became a vacuum of anxiety. The family waited, their hope a fragile, exhausted thing, hanging on the decision that would define their future. After hours of agonizing deliberation, the jury returned. The tension was palpable. Every eye was fixed on the jury foreman, waiting for the final, life-altering words that would seal her fate. The verdict slip was handed to the judge. Elias Vance's name flashed in the template, a stark juxtaposition of his crime of loyalty with Ellis's crime of malice. The judge read the decision. Judge, in the matter of the state versus Bianca Ellis on the charge of aggravated homicide, we, the jury, find the defendant. The word was delayed just long enough to draw the final breath from the gallery. Guilty. A wave of relief and sorrow washed over Julian Wood's family. The verdict confirmed accountability. Ellis's mask had been permanently ripped away, and the truth of her malice was legally established. The sentencing hearing was 3 weeks later. The focus shifted from her guilt to the ultimate price she would pay. The courtroom was packed, demanding the final judgment for the monstrous act. Julian's mother delivered a devastating victim impact statement, describing the permanent void in her life. She spoke not just of loss, but of the terror of facing Ellis's unsettling smile throughout the trial. Victim's father. Judge Russo, I ask you to do what's best for my family and the community, so she has no opportunity to commit these heinous crimes again. He called for life without parole. He directed his raw fury at Ellis. I hate you with every fiber of my being. You don't deserve a second chance. You don't deserve mercy. You didn't give my son any. The pain was absolute. Victim's father. You belong in prison where there is no chance of you getting out. I urge you to give her the maximum penalty without parole, so she has no chance of hurting another innocent soul like my sweet baby boy, Julian. Ellis's calculated mask finally shattered. Her smirk disappeared, replaced by a momentary flash of fear and regret. For the first time, she offered an apology. Bianca Ellis, I just want to say, I apologize. The words were too quiet, too late, devoid of the weight required to balance the magnitude of her crime. Judge John Russo acknowledged Ellis's mental health struggles, but emphasized the jury's finding of intent. The video had proven she understood the wrongfulness of her actions. Judge Russo, Ms. Ellis, the jury found intent. The evidence showed planning. Therefore, the court must impose the maximum sentence. Life without parole. The final gavel strike sealed her fate. Ellis was led away in handcuffs. The final image was not the smirk, but a defeated slump, the ultimate silent admission that her calculated performance had utterly failed to subvert the reality of justice. The aftermath was intense. The media framed the case as a necessary victory for accountability, arguing that mental illness, while relevant, cannot grant immunity for premeditated, intentional cruelty. No appeal was granted immediately. The video evidence and the competency finding formed an ironclad barrier against any simple reversal. Ellis was left to grapple with the prison reality she feared. In prison, she reportedly remained quiet and reserved, her courtroom persona extinguished. The silence was the final result of her monstrous actions, a desolate and inescapable punishment. The public reaction settled on a chilling conclusion. The system saw through the mask. The verdict was a signal that awareness, even if impaired, still carries the full weight of the law. The community of Homestead, Ohio, still struggles to feel safe in the familiar places where Julian Wood's life was stolen. The cost of that violence is paid daily in fear and persistent grief. The case remains a tragic reminder of how swiftly life can be destroyed. It forces society to continually examine the resources dedicated to preventing such calculated violence when mental stability is at risk. The court answered the legal question, guilty. But the moral core of the case remains a challenge to all. We saw the performance, the lie, and the ultimate accountability that followed the undeniable truth. The ultimate question lingers. Was Bianca Ellis truly suffering and unaware? Or was she pretending, fully aware of every cruel move she made? We must foster a society that champions empathy for the suffering, but demands accountability for conscious cruelty. Let Julian Wood's memory inspire us to protect the most vulnerable and prioritize mental well-being for the collective peace of humanity. If you found this compelling, please share this story to amplify the call for better community mental health support and robust legal accountability. Help us work toward a peaceful living style built on truth, not terrifying silence.